Thank you for joining us for this exclusive series of discussions on key factors for business expansion to the U.S., created by Bank Leumi USA together with Leumi Israel and Kלכליסט. This series is focused on best practices for scaling up your business as you expand to the U.S. Supporting tech companies has been a main focus for Leumi USA for many years. We leverage on the strength of our deep global relationship and our presence in New York, Silicon Valley, and Israel to offer access to financial products and services designated for fast-growing tech companies operating globally. As a local U.S. player, Leumi USA is familiar with the nuances of the tech market and its changing trends. Today, I have the pleasure of hosting two close partners of Leumi Tech, Yasmin Lukatz and Guy Franklin. Both are pillars of the Israeli tech communities and were both recently included in the Israeli press list of 10 most influential Israelis in America in 2020. Yasmin Lukatz is an investor and social entrepreneur. She is the founder and executive director of ICON, Israel Collaboration Network, helping Israeli entrepreneurs thrive in the U.S. market. Yasmin is on the investor team of the Israeli TV version of Shark Tank. She founded and served as a board chair of Israel's most widely read newspaper, Israel Hayom. Guy Franklin is the founder and CEO of Israeli Mapped in New York, an interactive platform of the Israeli startups operating in New York. Prior to that, Guy worked for over 10 years as an accountant at Ernst & Young in Tel Aviv and New York. In recent years, Guy has served as a managing director of SOSA New York, Open Innovation Platform. Thank you, Yasmin and Guy, for joining us today. Yasmin, Guy, hello, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you for having us.
So I'll start with an intro question. You're both highly involved in the ecosystems, Israeli-related ecosystems and tech ecosystems in your respective communities. Can you please elaborate on how ICON and Mapped in New York support the Israeli tech in New York and Silicon Valley? We'll start with you, Yasmin.
Thank you. So ICON is a nonprofit. We've been based in Silicon Valley and active here. And, and you've been part of this actually from day one, Roy, and the bank. So what we do, we are a community of people that share a passion for Israeli tech and innovation. And together we work to pay it forward and help community members. And the idea is help Israeli startups thrive. Now, this is all like high level. This is like our goal and our spirit and what we want to do. But what we actually do is we have several programs, and all of which create opportunities for Israeli tech startups to succeed in the US. One of them is about cybersecurity. Another program is about women in tech. There's a program called SV 101, which is like a boot camp for entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley, and the list goes on and on. So in short, through a variety of activities, we get this community together and use the strength of the community to help community members and to help the Israeli startups.
Thank you, Yasmin. And I have to admit, a very proud part of ICON from day one, and it's been growing incredibly and supporting so many different groups within this community. And to you in New York, Guy, so please tell us about Mapped.
Yes, so Israeli Mapped in New York represent the Israeli tech ecosystem in New York City, and basically it supports Israeli founders with their relocation to New York, from connecting them to investors, from angel investors to VCs, to corporates, meaning clients, to executives, and most, above all, to other entrepreneurs that they get support from experienced founders and serial entrepreneurs. And we support them on a daily basis in all of their needs when they are relocating to New York, in order for them to focus on their business, in order for them to be connected in a smooth way to the local ecosystem. And we have partners like Leumi, which is a proud partner of our activity, with landing package and landing pad for every Israeli entrepreneur that are relocating to New York or already based in New York.
Thank you, Guy. And this is also an activity that we are very proud to take a part of, and we see how it is supporting the growing tech community within New York. So I want to talk about relocation, which is the reason why we're here today. For years, it's been very clear. You want to do tech, you go to Silicon Valley, the mecca of the world. You want to sell to the financial industry, you go to New York. You're doing biotech, you're going to Boston. There was all kinds of unwritten guidelines according to the industry, biggest corporates within those areas. Now, COVID has created a shift, and we've all seen the trends of a lot of entrepreneurs, companies, and big corporates moving to Austin and to other areas. My question to you is from people that are very much involved in their communities, do you think these trends are here to stay? Or do you think that we will slowly shift back to our old industry-focused areas once virtual workplace is decreasing and we'll be back in the offices? Let's start with you, Guy, discussing New York and the trends that you're seeing there.
Everyone loves to use the word hybrid, the hybrid model that is the combination between the offline and online. But what I see exactly in the last, I would say, like 2 to 3 weeks, when New York is more open and Israel is from Israel, that already got the vaccine, they started to come again, like in the old days, to New York City. In the last 3 weeks, I met so many Israeli investors and entrepreneurs that coming back to the city to face-to-face meetings. And also a very important point is that a lot of companies that postponed their expansion to New York, now they are coming back with their original plans, that some of them hold these plans, or more than that, even fired the first person on ground in New York between March to May 2020. And now they are getting back on ground to New York. So that's one of the trends that I see right now. I have to say that New York is open, but according to a research that I found out last night, only 15 to 20% of the employees are coming back to the offices. And I think that the remote work, at least in New York, will stay because the commute that people are doing is from very far places, from New Jersey, upstate New York every day. And I think this here to stay. And last thing on that point is that we see a transition, actually a move of Israeli founders, executives, and other employees from the tech companies from New York to New Jersey. And now that you don't want to work from home, but you want to go to the office, but you don't want to do the commute, I see a new trend of Israeli companies taking like satellite offices in New Jersey in order to be close to the home, but still work from the office. And if there are a few people in that area, and there are some areas that are a lot of Israelis, they will work from that office instead for all of them to come to the city like in the old days.
Thank you, Guy. So Yasmin, what are you seeing in Silicon Valley, San Francisco area?
So I think it's important. Yeah, I think it's important to note, you spoke about the classical vertical division. You want to go here, you want to go there. I think it's important to remember that, you know, Silicon Valley is the number one ecosystem in the US, with New York being second, but it's not like first and second. There's a big gap still between Silicon Valley and New York. Having said that, we see a lot of movement. We've been seeing a lot of movement during COVID. Many people moved to Texas, to Oregon, moved back to Israel. But I think it's important to remember that this is the nature of this place. This place has always been like this. There's always immigrants that come. There's always people that come and people that go. And I think people understand the importance of being here in the center of everything. And what we've seen during COVID and what we're seeing now, I think COVID, to start with, really expedited a lot of technological improvements. So things that we would have been hard for us to tolerate, now we can do. I think that many companies that struggled and are coming out will come out stronger, will come out more efficient and about working. So, I mean, you know, when I'm looking at Icon and what we have done, I feel like we've taken this lemon and we made it into a lemonade. And I see other companies doing the same and trying to recognize the opportunities that this have created. I'll give you an example. We used to hold office hours. So I'll have someone from the industry and, experienced entrepreneur, an investor, or corporate executives come to our space in Palo Alto, which you're familiar with, sit there for a few hours, and the entrepreneurs will walk in and out and get advice. Now, this is limited to just the entrepreneurs that happen to be in Silicon Valley or visiting from Israel, visiting from New York, or living there now. But now what we've done like a marathon. We made it bigger, and it's all remote. So it's all on Zoom. So we kind of do Silicon Valley and a takeaway to everyone that's based anywhere in the world. So I think this is recognizing an opportunity that COVID created. And similarly, I think startups will continue to do the same. Now, I just met someone at a dinner on Friday that just relocated to Silicon Valley with a big corporate. And I was like, okay, so do you go to the office? He's like, no, I've been here for like 6 months. I haven't been to the office once. I was like, so why did you relocate? I says, well, it is important. It's, I know it's there. I might go once in whenever, and it's easier with the time zone. It's easier culturally. I think this is something also that we have to understand that you're impacted by your environment. This becomes part of your culture on how you speak, on how you do business, and who you know, who your kids go to school with. So that's my take.
Yeah, thank you for that. So based on what you're saying, you assume that in some capacity, the geography is important, and companies will go back to being in Silicon Valley, and people, families will go back to relocating. So what do you think, Yasmin, is that set of considerations that entrepreneurs that are thinking about relocating to Silicon Valley should have at top of mind today in terms of their business, their growth, their opportunities, and even their family lives?
So, you said family lives last, but I think this is crucial. I think this is important. You come with your significant other. Sometimes they have, you don't know what is their visa situation. Can they work? Can they not work? Coming with the kids. So you really want to figure a way to make this landing soft for everyone, and for everyone to get a job, to get the right schools. And I think communities like Icon, like MAP, like Bank Leumi, and resources like that are something that Israeli entrepreneurs should be using and should be looking at to make this lending the easiest possible. We have a Facebook group called Kvarkan, which you're familiar with. Like any question in the world was already asked there about relocation, and you got the crowd wisdom and people answered about that. So maybe my one tip about relocation is maybe my few tips. Okay, one, don't underestimate the importance of making your family happy. 2, don't be shy about getting help from the community. There's so many great community here. People, we do it as a nonprofit. We don't get any financial benefit out of it. And there's so many good people around that really want to help, and make this transition easy for them. So I would say these are my 2 tips. And also, if you left some of the team in Israel, because many startups work on this model of a dispersed startup, some is here, some is there, the communication is crucial, and going back and forth and bringing this knowledge.
Thank you, Yasmin. And Guy, what are the challenges that you see for entrepreneurs that are moving to New York? I know for me it's the weather, but I don't know if this is an important one.
Yeah, the weather is one thing, but I think that specific in this question, I agree with Yasmin. There's almost no difference, because I think the number one reason for failure of relocation is that your significant other don't find this place. It doesn't have to be like a working place. The person that the relocation was based on him is working all day, 24/7, and the significant other sometimes is with the kids, or doesn't have a working visa, as Yasmin mentioned, and some other reasons. And from my conversation with so many entrepreneurs that didn't succeed and went back to Israel, most of the reasons of this failure was that the family was not, I would say, happy with the situation in New York. That's from the personal level. And from the business level, I think the challenges are, you come with your startup from Israel. There are 9,000 startups in New York City. Suddenly, you are not someone that everyone probably know in Israel. You have to compete on talent with great startups that already have a lot of money. Other challenges, I'm sure we'll touch it in a different question, is how to hire Americans. Sometimes it's difficult to interview them and to understand, sales people know how to sell themselves, but you don't know if they're good or not until they start working, and they're doing an amazing job in selling themselves. So that's some challenges from the business side, and of course operations and the new culture and some other stuff like that. But I think the personal level is more important because this is the infrastructure for everything.
If I may add, I think you're not just competing with the other startups, you're also competing with the corporates. Think about all what the corporates have to offer talent. So it's a really big competition. I think another challenge, which I don't know if I mentioned, is how do you keep this connection between the founders when one is in one country and one is in the other country? If this is what you did, I think I saw a statistic that 90% or even more of entrepreneurs or teams in one stage of their life actually experience a difficulty, like a crisis in the relationship between the founders. And I think 14% of startups fail because of that, because the founders could not communicate. So one thing that, you really want to work on the connection between the entrepreneurs on both sides of the ocean, that they can virtually read each other's mind and continue this conversation, across the ocean, knowing each other, trusting each other, working on this relationship, which is also not a given.
Yeah, it's a great point. And if I may ask an additional question on what you just mentioned, Yasmin. So what do you think is the must have in terms of the really essential C-level that must be here on the ground, and what can stay in Israel from your experience and what you're seeing in terms of that crisis that you're describing in between the founders' relationship?
I mean, the classical saying is that you want the business functions here. You want the sales, the marketing, the customer success here. You want the CTO, you want the development in Israel. Also because this is where Israeli entrepreneurs have an edge on hiring, which we'll touch in a minute, because you're better equipped to hire good people because of your network in Israel. And product can go either way. Most companies I see live it in Israel with the development. But it's important to say that in startups, especially early on, the CEO, the entrepreneurs are the one that are doing everything. So I think it is important for them early on to kind of go back and forth and be in all places and, and pass the knowledge from one place to the other and be involved in everything that's happening and do the sales that they can learn a lot from and do everything.
Thank you, Yasmin. So Guy, what are you seeing as the more challenging hiring situations in the US and not just the hiring, but also the retention and connecting to the DNA? In what positions, and maybe some tips and tricks that you can provide startups from your experience?
Yeah, first, I would like to add about the C-level positions that what I see, and even in companies that I've been working with as a general manager or managing director, that until there is no a real product market fit, some of the Israeli companies, if they were not founded also in the US by founders that already live there, first they try to get into a product market fit, and only then to relocate some of the C-level executive in order to save money and time. So that's, I think, also an important point. And only after that, they relocate or hire the positions that Yasmin mentioned, that it's pretty much, I agree exactly what you said, the business side here in New York, here in the US, and the R&D in Israel. And I think that what I see, a main challenge for Israeli startups or founders is to hire the first person on ground. If one of the founders is not relocating and they are looking for a GM or for a first GM that will serve as a salesperson, sometimes it's companies that raise the seed round or even a pre-seed, and every dollar is important for them. And some of them failed in hiring the first salesperson that was the most important, I would say, position in the company at that point. And it led usually to a delay in the company's plans for expansion in the US. That's one thing, and also a culture fit. You have a team in Israel that you built with a specific culture fit, and to embed into that Americans with a different culture. Sometimes it's difficult, and I saw personally some Americans that after a few months in different companies that I saw that were next to me, I would say, they left the companies because it was difficult for them to deal with the Israeli culture, and there was not enough efforts from the management level really to embed them into the company in the right way.
I think culture is so important. I want to give you an example. I went once to meet with an Israeli entrepreneur here. The company was growing, and he's Israeli, I'm Israeli. The default is we speak Hebrew. And I come into the office and he started talking to me in English. Now, there's no one around us. And we walk towards the meeting room and we do like the small talk, but he insists on speaking English. And then only after we went into the boardroom and he closed the door, he says, okay, now I'll talk to you in Hebrew. And I was like, it's just us. There was no one else in the meeting. And he's like, no, this is my culture. It's like, I don't want people like to pass by the hall and hear us speaking in the language in a conversation they cannot be part of. So I think there's like a lot of nuances to culture and how to do it right. And I thought that's admirable. And I err sometimes on that. Like even if I'll go to an event, so at Icon events, we really worked hard on making it mixed. So half of the crowd will be US based, partners and VCs and corporate executives, and half would be the Israelis. And even there, if I'll speak with you, Ori, in an event, are we going to speak in Hebrew or in English? We're going to speak in Hebrew. Should we speak in English? Yes, we should. This is much better culturally. And about the hiring challenge, I just wanted to add that I think another challenge that we don't talk enough about is firing. If you hired someone and it's not a good fit, I think I see entrepreneurs many times err on the side of not firing quickly, not firing fast enough, because they don't, they want to be the good people. But in my mind, being a good person, I want to work in a company that in a position where I fit my skills, where my skills fit the position, and letting someone go because it's not the right fit anymore. It might have been, and it's not anymore. We might have made a mistake. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing because that person will find someone will find something, hopefully, that's a better fit for the skill. So I think we shouldn't just focus on hiring. We should also be aware of how do you fire fast enough.
I think it's a great point. I was once talking to a partner in an Israeli, very, very big VC. And he said that a very close colleague of him out of the US VC told him that if he's driving on the one-on-one, which both of us know very well, and he has a very strong feeling that it's not working and he has to move the Israeli CEO, he stops on the side and makes that call. Now, for us as Israelis, the stop loss is always kind of further. Let's wait. Let's see what we can do. But it's actually a great point and maybe very big cultural gap that we're seeing on that aspect. So if I touch the VC world, let's continue from that and talk a bit about the investments. During the past year, many VCs moved to virtual due diligence, and we're actually very proud of it. I was just interviewing Tim Golari from Sierra Ventures, and he told me that they did 22 new investments last year, and everything was done virtually. Do you think this trend is here to stay? Because what I see in Israel is that business is back to normal and everyone's meeting and you have a chance to really feel that team that you're investing in. What do you think is going to happen in the US in that aspect? Guy, let's start with you.
I think, and not for myself, because I'm dealing with so many investors in New York City and Israeli entrepreneurs on the other side, that I think that there's no something that will replace the face-to-face meetings in any aspect, not only with investors, but also with clients and other, because you build a real relationship and you see in the eye, as you can say in Hebrew, and nothing will replace it. But having said that, I see that investors in New York City love, some of them still love being in upstate and in the Hamptons, and they're not running back to the city. And even if Israeli founders in the last 3 or 4 weeks came to New York to meet with them, they still do Zoom, even if the investors are still here. But I think the most important thing is to build the relationship with the investors. And it doesn't, it matters a bit, but you have to build it all through online or through offline. And I think it will stay, but not to the same extent. And if at the beginning we didn't believe that investors will invest through Zoom, we see many VCs that never met the founders, and even I was involved in a few investments that they never met, and they invested. So I think it will continue, but not as we see until that point. It's very individual. Some of the investors, I think, will continue to do that, but most of them not. We prefer face-to-face.
I think that, like, behind the scene, there are two forces that pull in different ways. One is, like Guy said, people are people. We're social animals. People are thirsty to meet other people in a social context, in a business context. There's so many cues that pass when we meet each other face to face that don't really pass on Zoom. So there is like this inherent force that I want to meet people in person. On the other hand, I got to say that once the kids are in school, working on Zoom is so much more efficient for many people. Like, there's no transition costs from one meeting to the other. So that's also appealing. You can put more. And if in the beginning it was like none of the VCs is investing online only. So this was like something that you can imagine. And now everybody's doing it. So you're not even like socially different. Even for this. So these are the two forces that will make it balance, I don't know, somewhere in the middle. So I think it will be, again, it will be a mixture. It depends. If we're not sure about you online, maybe we're going to meet you offline. And I think this is also, we spoke about opportunities, taking the lemon and making it a limoncello, not just a lemonade. I think this is an opportunity for the Israeli founders, because you can start a relationship online. But again, there's also this other force. If English is not your native language, will you pass as well on Zoom versus in a face-to-face meeting? So it's a challenge and an opportunity for the Israeli founders to do more.
Do you personally feel comfortable in investing without meeting that person for your investor hat?
I actually have.
Interesting. So I want to ask a question about that. And you mentioned that English aspect and the Zoom and the relocation in general. For years, I've been meeting investors here, local investors, and they had a very clear condition. If I invest in an Israeli company, the C-level has to relocate here, or at least the business part of it. The excuse was, we can help them if they're here. We can connect them. We can help them network. We can help them build the product and the product market fit. We can't do it if they are on the other side of the world, 10 or 7 hours away. Do you think this is going to change now after seeing companies continue to thrive through COVID? Let's start with you, Yasmin.
So, there's like this, the legends about some famous investors here. One said that he wouldn't invest in a company where it's more than a bike ride or more than an hour flight, or now it's more than one charge of the Tesla. But is it still true or not? I think it's partially true, and partially could be accommodated with things that are happening now. Some investors have their mindset. I mean, I don't know if the question is if it's true or not, that this is what they'll do, because people do things for the wrong reason. I think the better question is this how it should be? No? Is this how it should be? Do you really get an extra value from being all the time close to your investors? Because they can help you more. So on one hand, I see that they can help you more even if you're not here. I think what's important, and I've been always saying this to Israeli entrepreneurs, is that you gotta not necessarily relocate, but just come often enough. And now maybe come often enough could be virtually as well, but touch your investors, touch your customers, touch your partners, touch community members often enough. One of our entrepreneurs from SV101 Batch 1, extremely successful, said before COVID, he used to be here once every 6 weeks. He was based in Israel, decided to leave the entire company in Israel and not relocate. Now they have an office here, but then and he would make it his business to be here every 6 weeks. He wouldn't wait for something. He wouldn't wait for meetings. He's like, I'm here and those dates. And then let's say somebody wanted to meet with him the week before. He said, well, I can't that week. I'm busy, which makes total sense. Let's do it the week after. So many people didn't feel like he's not here. Working online makes it even easier because you're here and you're not here all the time. So I think, again, it's all in the mindset of the investor. If the investor is set on you have to be here, maybe they're not going to help you. Maybe, and you don't want to be here. Maybe this is not the right investor for you. You also got to think about who is the right investor for you and what are the right decisions for you.
Well, hopefully our good friends, the investors from Menlo Park, will be open to investing out of their zip code now. But let's see, time will tell. What are you seeing in New York on that aspect, Guy?
I agree with the things that Yasmin said, but I will add something from the other point of view. I think it's a reasonable ask from the investor point of view not to invest in a company that is not based in the US, because sometimes I hear investor that telling me that if the founder doesn't understand that he has to be in New York starting yesterday and not coming only once a month or once in 2 months, I don't want to invest in that company that the founder cannot sacrifice or cannot relocate from that reason or other to New York. And they are telling me that they will not invest in the company. I think there's also a difference if it's an early stage, if it's angel investors, then they are more willing to invest in a company that is based in Israel because they understand that they are very early and their plan right after the investments, if it's like even a few, a small amount, the plan is to take this money and to relocate to the US, then it's fine. But if it's a company from like seed, round A, and they are not have a presence in New York, or one of the founders is not in New York, I think it's sometimes most of the cases, it's a reasonable ask from the investor side. And also just take another point of view of sometimes Australian startups or South Korean startups, which I'm in touch with, ask me to connect them to investors. We are focused on the Israelis. And then I'm looking on that from the side and I'm telling them, American investors will not invest in you if you are in Australia or you're not close to them. There is a difference with the Israelis because the Israeli market is in the US and sometimes the Australians or South Korea, they have their market. But still, it's more difficult to invest in a company that is not based here. And the investor feels that they can provide less value if the founder, if one of the founders is not here.
I'm not sure I 100% agree. I'm not sure I 100% agree. I think we have many examples of great companies that are still based in Israel. Some of them are big consumer companies, but also some B2B companies that are based in Israel and worked hard and made it. So there's no one rule for everyone. And I don't know if I want my entrepreneurs to sacrifice. I want them to do what's the right thing for the company. I mean, think about the advantage they have in recruiting in Israel. If they move everything here, they're not going to lose that advantage and compete with companies here about recruiting. So I think it's very personal about what is the right answer for that founder and for that company on when is the right time to, if and when is the right time to move. Yes, it is easier if you're here, but I think the key word is presence. You got to be present. You got to be present and you got to be involved and you got to understand that there are amazing resources here for you. So that's my answer.
Most of the companies, there are more than one founders. So if one of the founders is relocating to the US, they're still not losing this advantage in Israel, and they're splitting the founders' power to both places.
Yeah, I think time will tell. Yasmin, I remember in one of our Icon annual events, Alan presented a deck showing that exits, for example, are 10 times bigger when the company relocates here. On the other hand, we do see Playtika and Mobileye and other very big Israeli success stories. So time will tell, and time will definitely tell if COVID shifted some of the mindset in that regards.
I think also the Israeli market is maturing. There's, even people that came here, they sold their startups, they moved back to Israel. They're bringing back knowledge, they're bringing expertise, they're bringing the connection. So I think the market, let's see what happens.
Yeah, we also see what will happen in the hiring front. I speak with many Israeli founders, and they're telling me that it's brutal in Israel now. A lot of very big corporates started working there. And now with COVID, they told me, our team in Israel, they don't hesitate to take a call from any recruiter, and bam, next morning, you're missing 2 of your best engineers that moved to one of the biggest corporates. So time will tell where the advantage would be for the long run. I want to finish with a question that will maybe give some tools, tips and tricks for those Israeli entrepreneurs that are thinking about their investment round now in the US, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you've seen Israeli entrepreneurs do? And based on that, some tips and tricks that you can provide them for a successful funding round. Yasmin, let's start with you.
So I think the best connection to an investor is through a warm introduction. And through a warm introduction of maybe an entrepreneur in his portfolio that was successful. So that would be the best. I think entrepreneurs should aim to try, first they have to figure out who is the right investor for them. And there's imagine this matrix of vertical and stage. So if I'm doing cybersecurity and I'm raising a growth round, I'm not going to speak with an ag tech investor that's investing only in seed because it's be wasting both our time. So sometimes if you talk about mistakes, entrepreneurs send me their deck and says, who can you connect me with? Well, it's not going to happen. I have never met you and I'm not going to do the work for you. Who should I be talking to? No, you should know who you should be talking to. You should look at the vertical and you should look at the stage, and you have to see if that specific investor is not investing in a competitor. So I think the first mistake is not narrowing down the potential investors world to the specific investor that would be a good fit for you. I think the next stage is trying to get to them through a warm introduction. Now, I think the communities are maybe the underutilized resource that those entrepreneurs have. How many entrepreneurs come to you, not for bank, maybe you start the conversation about banking, but you end up connecting them with the VCs that connecting them to us, connecting them to Guy. So there's so many resources like your bank, like Icon, like Mapped, that entrepreneurs should be looking at and learning from everyone that's involved in that community and start creating those connections. So I think this is my big mistake, is thinking somebody else will do the work for you and not utilizing the resources that you have around you.
Yes, I think it's a great point. And for us in the bank, that we focus on providing that network of connection. It's not a business model, but it's just helping people start building that community. And I think that's the key.
I mean, in the end, it is a business advantage because, they come to you because you can do more than just a bank.
Yes, I agree. And I definitely see it as an added value for us. And of course, for Icon, for MAP and other organizations. Guy, what are your some lessons learned from mistakes that you've seen over the years?
So I couldn't agree more with the two first things that Yasmin mentioned, which is prepare a list of relevant VCs or other investors that are relevant to your company, and also a warm intro, which is also the best way. Although you can reach out today to almost everyone, but it's always better through a warm intro, through a person or an entrepreneur that the VC already invested in. I would add on that I think that in addition to preparing a list, it's better to have a priority on that list, and sometimes to start with the VCs that are not the strongest, and through that meetings to improve your pitch and presentation from meeting to meeting in order to maximize the results when you're talking with the dream VCs for you that are relevant to your startup. And storytelling is also very important in order to deliver your message in a very clear way to Americans. And I think that I see a lot of companies that the storytelling is not the best. They are so focused heavily on the product and the technology that they are approaching. They have one opportunity with an investor, and sometimes they are missing the point. And so that's also something important. And also convincing with a passion that what you are working on is the hottest trend these days. This is also something that will engage the investors. And above that, face-to-face meeting, I think, is better than Zoom if you can do that.
All great points. I definitely relate to the storytelling. And one of the things that we did through COVID is connect with Donna, that you all know, and provide her services to early entrepreneurs from portfolios of VCs that we work with in Israel. And there was an amazing demand because that was really a big part, especially with COVID and that virtual connection. I want to thank you both for joining me today. It was a pleasure, as always. Generally, it's a pleasure to join hands with incredible organizations that are doing so much in support of the Israeli community and its connection to the local ones. I want to thank you, Yasmin, and thank you, Guy, and have an incredible rest of your day.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.